What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Thrive, where I believe you were not created to survive, but to thrive. And if you change yourself, you can change your world. Welcome to another episode. Once again, I want to thank you for all the subscriptions. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for sharing this on your Instagram stories and letting people know about it. Thank you for the YouTube comments. We're approaching 900 subscribers, which is absolutely insane. God has been good in a year and some change. Today, I'm really excited about this episode. We have a guest in the building, and this is now my brother for the last now almost 5-6 years. He's been cutting my hair. He's a barber, a friend, a brother, and a believer in the Lord. I got my brother Carlos Flores with me. What's going on, Carlos?
What's up, brother?
How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Not only are you a fellow brother, I'm sorry to cut you off. I wanted to say this, and I forgot, a fellow Hialeah brother.
In the house, of course.
That's what we got to absolutely mention. Born and raised in Hialeah.
Actually, born in Nicaragua.
You were born in Nicaragua?
I'm an actual Nicaraguan.
Oh, wow.
Truly. But I came when I was 3.
Yeah.
My parents came over when I was 3. And I've been in Hialeah. I grew up in Hialeah. I went to school there. Yeah. I played in the parks of Hialeah, played baseball in my life.
Yeah, we have very similar backgrounds. Growing up in Hialeah.
Hialeah churches, Hialeah pastors.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hialeah baseball.
Hialeah baseball.
Where'd you play baseball?
I played at HAA, which is very, very, very popular in the 90s.
I played Mylander Park.
Mylander Park, yeah.
I guess Mylander Park had his own league, or I don't know if I played for some league that was playing. I must have been 9, 10 years old. I was very, very, very young. But I remember us playing in Mylander Park.
Yeah, it was probably, I used to play in Sparks Park. So It was probably like during the summer when summer camps were free.
Yep.
So my parents would, anything free, obviously, hey, let's go do it.
Absolutely.
So those are the good old days. Yeah, anything. So we would go play. I played at Sparks Park. And we would travel. Yes, we had a van. And they would go to Mylander Park.
Oh, so your team had...
yeah, Sparks Park actually had a little minivan.
Oh, wow.
And they would take
I don't think Mylander had any. I don't think we traveled anywhere.
Yeah, so we would travel to play Walker Park, Babcock Park.
Mylander.
Yeah, Mylander. And but that was
maybe we played you guys.
Maybe we did play each other.
I did a couple summer camps there at Mylander because I remember we played... they had like some... what's it called? Like foosball games inside the park.
Yeah, inside the little
center hall or whatever it's called. I did swimming lessons my whole life growing up in Mylander Park. My sister almost made the swimming team. So all of us, that's where we grew up. Hialeah.
Hialeah. My parents came to Hialeah, and they're still in Hialeah. My mom still lives in Hialeah.
Shout out to Hialeah. Still to this day, I love it.
A very powerful, very wild city.
People can say whatever they want about it, but I love it.
I love Hialeah. I believe that everyone should go to Hialeah and meet somebody from Hialeah because they do have it. Yeah, and Hialeah has its beautiful places. It has this,
now they started that whole arts district.
Yeah, they do.
I haven't gone yet. Somebody told me about the arts district, and I got them like, Hialeah has an art district. I want to pass by.
They do, and they have great restaurants.
I went to Twin Lakes Elementary. Where'd you go?
I went to Milam Elementary.
Milam. Okay.
And then I
think I had heard of Milam.
Milam Elementary? It's close to the mall, Westland Mall.
Okay. I grew up going to Westland Mall my whole life. I went to Twin Lakes Elementary, which back then went all the way up to 6th grade. And so after I was going to do 6th grade in Twin Lakes, and after that I was supposed to go to Palm Springs middle school.
But that's when you guys
moved down here to Color Ridge. Where'd you go to middle school?
I went to Jose Marti.
Okay, and then
Jose Marti Middle School. When Jose Marti Middle School was one of the worst schools.
Wow.
Now it's a school.
Okay, I think all the schools are turning around because I went
a lot
to
of those
South Ridge.
schools. Yeah, a lot of those schools are now like they're academically like wow. Like
somebody told me the other day Southridge is amazing, and I'm like, not when I went. I mean, it was good. I mean, I had a great time, but it wasn't an A school.
The same thing with us. Like when I went to Jose Marti Middle School, like my parents, like I said, any field trip, go.
Yeah.
So we actually had the experience when I was in middle school that I don't know if I'm sure some of you guys have seen it, but that show Scare Straight.
Yeah.
That they take kids to jail. Yeah. I was one of those kids.
They took you guys to a jail?
Yeah. Just to see it.
Product of
Hialeah. And it's like, believe it or not, like it really helped a lot of us.
It really took you guys to a prison?
They took us to downtown where the courthouse is, the jail behind it. As a tour.
I can't believe that.
And we had the prisoners come up to us and talk to us. Like, hey, give us some advice.
This is middle school.
This is middle school. I must have been like 12.
But you weren't like in a
I wasn't a bad kid. No, I wasn't a bad kid or nothing.
Because I understand if you take like all the kids that have been like in
I've never been suspended. I never fought in my life.
So they're just like, let's take all of them in case.
This is just my parents got the filter form. Yeah, sí, claro. Vaya.
¿A dónde van? A la prisión, dale.
Está bien, aprenda algo.
Wow.
So they took us, and as an experience that I never forget, you know. But it did help.
Wow. Growing up in Hialeah, you grew up in a Christian home. Your parents, absolutely,
yes,
men and women of God. So you grew up in church.
I grew up in church.
What church in Hialeah?
We went to Jesucristo el Todopoderoso with Pastor Agüero.
Wow, yes.
We went there.
Shout out to Pastor Agüero, a legend in the city of Miami. Yes. A man of God, a legend. Decades and decades preaching the gospel. Wow, you went to Agüero's church.
I went to Agüero's church.
To El Buen Pastor with Melquiades Santi Esteban. Pastor Santi Esteban. Went there for a while. Dorcas was my Sunday school teacher. She's now an incredible podcaster as well. Her husband, the #1 surgeon at Baptist. They're incredible couple.
Good for them.
Eunice, who's in our church now, was leading worship back then, right before I got there. So it was an awesome church in Hialeah. But Hialeah has some good stuff, man.
They do.
Amazing people came out of Hialeah.
I remember that church when they first started. It was a really small location in a plaza. And I remember I must have been like 5. I remember falling asleep during service because it was so late.
Yeah.
So when you back in the days of Hialeahs and I was fall asleep on the floor. My parents had no issues. Like, hey, you go to sleep. We're going to keep worshiping Jesus.
That's how I grew up too.
Exactly. There wasn't we got to go home because, it's 8 o'clock, it's 9, we got to go, I go to sleep. No.
The other day, it was a Sunday afternoon and we were still at church. Like, our last service is at 1:30, so it must have been 3:34. We're still there at church. And I look, and one of our pastor's daughters, who's older, Kenny, one of his older daughters, is carrying Aria. And they're just like, they're walking around the back rooms and carrying Aria while me and Nana were talking to a couple of the pastors, and I see them walking by, with Aria, our daughter, and I loved it. And I almost had like this flashback. That's how I was raised. I remember still to this day holding on to somebody's hand. I forgot who. I must have been 7, 8 years old. My parents were the youth pastors, and somebody was carrying my brother. My brother must have been maybe 5 years old. They were carrying my brother, and somebody was holding me by the hand. They were taking us, to the offices or something, because my parents were busy while we waited for my parents. But I grew up in church like that. Yeah, and if anything, just fall asleep. We had pews in El Buen Pastor. So if anything, just fall asleep in a pew. You're going to be all right. But I loved it. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Oh, me either.
It's awesome.
It was an amazing experience. Obviously, it was a lot of kids.
Yeah.
So we had fun times.
Same.
We played football, run around. But when it came down to serving God in those churches, they were big on that.
There was one time where I was at this other church down in Homestead, El Buen Samaritano, and they were having a vigilia. Did you grow up with vigilias?
Yeah, of course.
Prayer all night.
All night.
All night prayers. And all of us, all the kids, we must have been 12, 13 years old. We snuck out and we went to this trailer that the church had in the back. And we were all hanging out in this trailer. It must have been like 7, 8, 9, 10 of us back there in a trailer. And I don't even know what we were up to, what we were doing. Young kids, just
no
the
Wi-Fi,
last thing we want.
No internet.
No internet, no phones,
video
no
games,
nothing. But we're like, we don't want to be in a vigilia. What are you doing at 12 years old in a vigilia, 11 years old? So, and I remember somebody came in, one of the pastors or something, was like, what are you guys doing here? Got us all out of there. But those are experiences that were awesome. It's like, it's midnight, my brother in Christ. We don't want to be here. Tell my parents to take us home.
I remember when Pastor Agüero used to do La Carpa.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I remember. In front of the ocean and the what's it called? The Orange Bowl.
Yes.
He would do La Carpa, and that was every day. That wasn't just on Saturdays and Sundays.
Straight revival nights.
Straight revival night until the Holy Spirit said, we got to go. But we were there, and we had school the next day.
Wow.
And that was every single night.
Los, you grew up in church like your whole life.
I grew up in church.
From as long as you can remember, your parents were both
my
believers.
Parents, since I could remember, my parents would go to church.
Wow.
And it was non-negotiable. We're going to church with a tie.
Yep.
It's dressed down with your hair combed to the side. We're going to church.
Wow.
No matter what.
And now growing up in church, you experienced all that. You went to Sunday school, went to all these revival services, all that. That's why I say we have very, very similar backgrounds, Hialeah, all that. There is a lot of amazing stuff that comes with it. But then life happens. We start going through the challenges of life, the storms of life. Your family, a very united family from what I can see. Yeah. Both your mom and dad loving Jesus, loving God. You guys are in church. And then fast forward, years go by. And I think your story, your family story, it reminds me that nobody's exempt from tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, you guys were a very, still to this day, God honoring family. You guys love the Lord. You guys love the church. But yet things can happen in this world that we don't understand. Number one, I want to thank you for being here today to share a little bit of your story. I want to thank you for being vulnerable and open about something that I know is difficult, is challenging, is hard, but I know it's going to help a lot of people. Me and you have been talking about this for years. You've been, I think, cutting my hair now for 5, 6, 7 years. And I remember when you first told me the story, I was so shocked and grieved, but yet there's this tenacity, I think, about you. There's this tenacity about your mom, the spiritual like grit that you guys are faith people. And we're going to get into that in a moment because I do think you guys have the gift of faith, which the Bible speaks about. But I want to start going into the story of what happened several years ago, a challenge that your family went through, a tragedy that your family went through. You guys remind me a lot of us, a very close-knit family, going to church, serving the Lord. How many brothers and sisters?
My parents had 6 kids in total.
Kids.
They had 3 boys and they had 3 girls. I'm the youngest of all of them. My parents, when they were much younger, before I was born, they also lost a baby.
Okay.
She passed away when she was a baby, and this was in Nicaragua, which I'm sure I spoke to my father about it, my mom, and they had their trials and tribulations. They had their moments.
Yeah.
And then we had she had my sister. They had my sister, which is the one that is 4 years. She was 4 years older than me, and then they had me.
So you were the closest to that sister?
To my sister, yeah, I was the closest one. That was like, the one you grew up with, the one that I shared rooms with her. We played all the games. She would take care of us when there was no summer camp. So she was in charge of all the cousins. Yeah. She would worship at church. She would.
She was part of the worship team?
She was a leader.
Wow.
Yeah, she would play the piano. She would sing. And grew up in church just like me. She went on and met a guy at church, another youth leader that he sang to. He was a leader at church. He did Sunday schools for the kids, and they went on and they got married. And I grew up with him. I've shared this with you. Like, he was like a brother to me because my brothers were much older. Mm-hmm. So by the time I got to my teenage years, he was the one that was in the picture because my sister was dating him. Yeah. So my brothers have moved on. They have gotten married, moved away. And he was the one that was there. Take me to my baseball games, take me to Dolphin games, take me to Miami Heat games. We were super close. And I grew up, he grew up. They got married. He was in the military. He joined the military. He was in the Navy. And or no? She was not. She was not in the military, but when they got married, she left with him, obviously. And they lived everywhere. I think you told me,
you went to Japan with both of them?
Yes, they were living in Japan. They were stationed in Japan, so that's when me and Angela, my wife, we were able to go visit them. Okay. And my nieces, they already had 2 little girls, beautiful girls. And but they went everywhere. They were in Italy, all over the world. And it was about 10 years ago when we didn't know. She told us basically at the end that they were having issues. That he was very controlling, that he was very demanding, that he was abusive. We had no idea. Like,
yeah, from what you saw,
never saw it. I never,
that.
And a lot of people say, "Oh, why didn't you guys?" No, you just people put on a mask and you don't know what they're going through. And they were going through a divorce. She had moved back with my parents. And she was living here, and then that's when she opened up and told us that, he was threatening her, and he had PTSD, and he was violent. So we did go, and we did do the things that everyone does, and go get the little paper that they give you at the court to,
Was that a restraining order?
Restraining orders. We went, which is wild because we went to do the restraining orders, and at first they didn't even want to give it to her because he was a military hero. Because he did go. If you look at him on paper, he was amazing. Yeah. He served. He went to Iraq. He was a war hero. He was an officer. Wow. He never had a ticket. He had a master's degree. He was an amazing person. And with me, he was an amazing person.
Took care of you.
Amazing.
Your big brother.
Big brother to me, and I was so proud of him.
Yeah.
And
so when you start finding out about all this stuff, and now you got to do the training orders and all that, it's hard.
I was shocked. It was hard for me because that's my brother, you know. And I had no idea. Like even when we went to Japan, like we were in their house and we didn't see anything. We didn't hear anything. I've never heard him talk down to her.
Yeah, mistreat her or nothing.
Never. And make a long story short, a month before my wedding with my wife Angela, he took her life in front of my mom and the girls, and that was shocking. I'll never forget that phone call from my mom. You know, and it was something that shocked our world, shocked our lives, and it comes down to sometimes like, we're human, you know. We're gonna ask God why. You know, why would you allow this? Why would you allow something so bad? Even though we worship you, we've praised you, we've given our life to you, and it's tough sometimes. It's tough because a lot of people think that when you are walking with Christ, it's gonna be amazing, which it is, but that doesn't mean that bad things are not gonna happen.
Yeah. Doesn't mean you're exempt from tragedy striking your home.
Yeah.
Once again, thank you. I know it's a heavy story. Every time I talk to you about it, every time I've been around your mom, it's just remarkable faith. Like even recently, just this other situation your family went through. Your dad, a hero, just ended up passing away several weeks ago.
Yeah.
Your dad had an encounter with the Lord at 20-something years old in the streets of Nicaragua. God saved him and rescued him and changed his life. I remember there's been times where I go to the barbershop and your dad's in the back chair with his Bible open. And he was just reading the Bible every single time. And he always had some kind of, new revelation that God was telling him.
He would talk to you about it.
Yeah, something new that he had read in Scripture. So while you're cutting my hair, he would come over and he would share what he had just found in Scripture, years of walking with Jesus, and still this joy of reading the Bible, still this joy of finding new things in the Bible. There was this joy in your father and there was this faith in your mom that after going through something like what your family walked through, is absolutely remarkable. And it's an example to many of us. Your mom to this day is just a woman of faith. Your dad passes away and I approach her and I go give her my condolences. And she just has this joy about her, this peace about her, this hope about her, that it's literally what the Bible talks about. And you told me a long time ago when you first shared the story about your sister, you said, now my mom has a gift of faith. The Bible talks about the gift of faith. Why do you say that? What have you seen in your mom? What are some things that have helped you as you've seen your mom lead through all these ups and downs?
What I've seen with my mom is obviously growing up, having so many kids a lot of us coming from another country without having anything here, and still worshiping, still thanking God, no matter what, and struggling. And, my dad was the only income they had. And even to this day, at my age, I'm like, man, how did my parents do it? Like, and I'm sure you've had that,
absolutely.
like how? Like it's incredible.
Yeah,
like,
we only have Arya, and we're like, how
did
they do it with three of us for you guys,
like,
6?
Yeah, 6 of us, and it's like they still went to church every day. Yeah. They still fed us. They still, and it's like I'm sure they had their moments.
Yeah,
but they stood strong. They went to church. They prayed. The Bible was always open at my house. And I seen my mom, like even with the barbershop, like she always said that God's going to provide. God's going to do it. And God's going to keep these doors open. And he has.
Wow.
And she motivates me. And seeing things like that, like now that you mention it, like my father and my mom, is like, it gives you as a human, as a Christian, it gives you like that hope that we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
We need those people in our lives.
Absolutely.
We need people that are strong, that have been through stuff like that, because it's not easy. They lost a baby and they lost an adult, and they're raising my nieces.
Wow!
So they did 3 generations. They're raising adults, me and my nieces. That's hard. That is difficult.
Yeah, absolute champions.
And it's just incredible to see it. And to this day, they don't have any anger towards my brother-in-law at all. Yeah. They forgave him.
I want to talk about that because I think listeners, including myself, when I first heard that story, you put yourself in that situation. How would I react? What would I do? And so let's go back to that day. That day you get the phone call, you go to your parents' house.
Yeah, I'm living in Kendall, so I was actually the last one to get to the scene.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the scene, everything was closed off. The cops wouldn't let me through.
Yeah.
And at the moment, as a human, as a brother, I was disturbed. I was upset, I was sad, I was mad. But now I understand why God made that, let that happen. Because
for you to be the last one.
Yeah, because I wasn't able to see her.
Yeah.
I don't have that image of my sister, because this happened outside the house. Like, it was in front of my parents' house. So, obviously, until they investigate, and they said, she's there.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't allowed to go in. I was outside, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. It was a lot of people there. A lot of people were coming around, and
what did you see in your parents the next few days? What are some things they told you that has shaped you today as a man when tragedy strikes? I know that you told me your mom was still resilient. You know, they just lost their baby girl. You know, they had lost a baby years and years before, and now here they lost a daughter.
Yeah.
What were some of their first words, reactions that you're like, man, I want to be like them? They are people of faith.
They weren't angry. They never showed me that they were upset.
Wow.
They never showed me that, I can't believe this guy did that. Why they got, no. My mom was always how you've seen her. She's very firm, her belief. She's very strong. And she always told me that, God knows what he's doing. As bad as it looks, there's always a purpose.
Wow.
There's always a purpose. We don't know where my sister was going to end up, if she was going to marry somebody else that was going to derail her. We don't know. We don't know. So her confidence is that as bad as it looks, God knows exactly how he allowed this to happen and why he allowed this to happen. That's hard.
That's next level faith.
That's hard to comprehend, especially when you assume that you're in church every Sunday.
Yeah.
You pray, you give your tithing.
Here we are honoring
you're doing
Lord.
everything, you're being obedient, and then why?
I feel like they have a real, true, proper, full understanding of Romans 8:28, that all things work out for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. I feel like we say that often. And we say, all things work out for the good. But we say that for little things that happen, I got a tire. My tire went flat.
I got a new job. Okay, cool.
All things work out for the good. I'm late to work, but you know what? All things work out for the good. Something happened, or I lost a job. But to lose a life, to have somebody's life taken, your daughter's life taken in front of your house in a massive tragedy, and for her to still be like
in front of her, she witnessed the whole thing. Wow. So it's like something. I'm a father now. And I don't know. I don't know what I would do. It's incredible.
Wow. But that started to shape you. Yeah. And that started to, obviously, that the shaping happens as you were young, your parents being an example, being in church, loving the Lord, honoring him. But when you see your parents react that way, it has to make an impact in your life. Like, these are true people of faith. How do you not hold resentment? How do you not hold bitterness? And like you said here, all these years later, they never held resentment. They never held unforgiveness. They forgave him. They walked through that. What about you in your own personal life? Did it take you a couple days, a couple months? Were you angry for some time? Did that confuse your relationship with God?
To be honest with you, I was never angry at it. I was sad, of course, because of the disconnect. I had never lost somebody so close to my life, which she was my sister.
Your best friend?
My best friend. We grew up, like I said, we grew up together, everything we did together. And
by the way, your wedding is a month later.
Yeah, I was getting married.
So that's a lot of emotions.
She was my bridesmaid. She was my wife's, her best friend at the moment.
Wow.
And
that's a whole lot of emotions to process in a month.
Yeah.
So you got ups and downs. You're excited. You're getting married. Tragedy
strikes. One of the best times of my life. Getting married. She loved my wife. She loved Angela. She was so excited, so happy for us that we were going to take this next step. And a month before, it just boom.
What was your sister's name again?
Diana.
Passes away. Tragedy happens. What did the next 3-4 weeks look like right before your wedding in your own life? There's a lot to handle there.
There is a lot to handle. But my mom told me that, like I said earlier, like God does things for a reason. You might not understand it today, but in the future, He'll show it to you. He'll reveal it to you. And in those moments, I just try to focus on what was ahead of me, which was my wife, my future. I know that's what my sister would have wanted. You know, she would have wanted me to get married and do my life and do what I had to do and be a man of God. And it wasn't easy because, you know, we did do a little dedication for her in the wedding, and she was part of the wedding. And it was not an easy thing to process. But I know God was there. Even though in that moment, you know, we weren't even going to church yet. I had stopped going to church.
Is that you had stopped just on your own, just life happened, or?
I basically, like a lot of us, when we get to the teenage years, we kind of like, I don't want to do Hialeah no more. I don't want to go to church every single day.
Yeah.
So my parents kind of like, okay.
Yeah, you were old enough where you could make your own decisions.
Exactly. So I was in that stage that I was in my early 20s already, mid-20s when I got married. And I knew God. I knew all the principles that my parents had instilled in me, and I knew the word, but I just wasn't following. So it's crazy because something so tragic like this, that's where God is the closest to you. And God is trying to bring you in. Come on. Let's go. It's time. But that wasn't even the full effect. We still didn't go to church yet because my wife was raised Catholic. So we had a little bit of what do we do? You know, let's not go to church. What do we do? And then comes into that story now. After we get married, a couple of years later, we have our beautiful boy. He's 7 years old now. But my wife went into what they call postpartum depression.
Yeah.
Which is another obstacle in life.
Yeah.
To the point that she would tell me things like, you know, I don't want to be here no more. I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I want to take my life. You know.
Yeah, it was severe postpartum depression what she went through.
Which is another for any man. It's like to hear your wife tell you that after you just got married, you had a baby boy.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the most joyful time.
Yeah.
It's hard to process.
It is hard to process, which is another obstacle that is like, it's like, it'll make anybody think and actually cry out to God, like, why? You know, God. But this time, God used that specific situation and did bring us to church. Home. Yeah. He did bring us home.
Wow.
And I'll never forget the moment that my wife told me, I want to go to a Christian church.
Wow.
I want to do something different. Let's go. And and at that time, Calvary, you guys were doing a 6 p.m. And I remember going to the 6 p.m. service. And that was in December 2018. And we never stepped out.
Wow. Carlos, throughout that whole process, you never got bitter or resentful with God?
No.
Never angry? Why'd you take my sister? Yeah, you would ask questions. But it didn't draw you further away from God. Like you said, it was more like God was using that to draw you in.
Yeah. It wasn't like I was angry. Because like I said, I forgave my brother-in-law too. I'm not angry to this very moment. I'm not. Yeah. I've actually spoken to you about that I've actually want to take the next steps to actually go visit him.
Yeah.
And
what was it, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it at the courthouse that you actually said some words to him or something like that?
In the courthouse, this is the first time I had seen him after it happened. And this has to probably be one of the hardest moments in my life. Because seeing him come out in the whole jumpsuit, orange jumpsuit, cuff like an animal, that broke me.
Sounds like your big brother.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, I didn't say nothing to him there. I just couldn't. But now, the past couple of years, like I've spoke to you about that, like it's something in my heart's tugging to. You got to go visit him. You got to go see him.
And that's not easy. And you told me there's zero unforgiveness,
I'm
zero
not-
resentment toward him.
I'm not mad at him, not even 1%.
Wow.
I forgive him. He's human. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes. And as a Christian, it's our job to visit those people.
My brother, what you just shared and what you are saying is so, it's deep. It's not easy to do.
No.
Some of us have gone through unforgiveness for a day or for two for much lesser things.
Yeah.
And I think what you're sharing right now is so valuable to me, to a lot of us, on how to forgive.
Yeah.
Many would say you're absolutely crazy for forgiving somebody who took your sister's life. And what you just said is so true. Is what Jesus reminds us of. Like, we are all sinners.
That's what Jesus did for us.
100%.
Every
single one of us.
Every single one of us. You know, we try to think that, oh no, because my sin is not as bad as that sin. But sin is sin, no matter what.
Yeah.
And God hates sin.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't want to hear that, but God hates sin.
Yeah.
And we're all sinners. And sometimes we do things that, yeah, we might think it's not so bad, but to God it's really bad.
Yeah.
So who are we to judge? Who are we to say that could be me? What if I make it?
That's the reality right there. That could be me.
That could be me, because you don't know how you're going to react.
Yeah.
You're going through a divorce.
Yeah.
You think
in a
your
weak
kids
moment, you lose your mind.
You think your kids are going to be taken away from you? A lot of us men have probably thought about that. Yeah. Just think about it. What would you do if your kids, they wouldn't want you to see your kids?
Wow.
Anything can happen to your mind, to your brain.
Yeah.
Especially if, you know, this guy was a trained soldier. Like, he went to war.
Yeah,
you know,
who knows what PTSD he's
yeah.
dealing with and whatnot.
For him to control his emotions, you know, it's like, just put yourself in his position. Like, he gave it all, not just for his family, but for our country.
Yeah.
To feel betrayed, to feel in those moments, like, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
For us to just say, I hate that guy. Forget him. I hope he rots. And that's what a lot of humans would think. He deserves what he gets. Yeah, I understand we are going to pay for, in this world, we're going to pay for what we've done. But that doesn't mean that he can't be forgiven. Because God can forgive him.
Absolutely.
Just like that thief on the cross with Jesus. Because in those times, those were the worst of the worst. The people on the cross were the worst of the worst. And what did Jesus tell him?
Today you will be with me in
He didn't
paradise.
say in 3 months, after you pray this prayer, after you go to church for 3 weeks. No. Today you'll be in paradise.
You are preaching, my brother.
Yeah.
That's Hialeah product right there.
Hialeah, baby. Hialeah. That's a hardcore Hialeah.
Unforgiveness will actually poison your soul. It's been 10 years now. And if for 10 years you or your mom or your father who just passed away would have lived with unforgiveness, you would have not had the peace you guys have.
Yep.
The joy that you guys have. Every time I see you, every time I would see your dad, or every time I see your mom, there's this radiant peace about it. It's supernatural. It's not natural. That's why it's supernatural.
Yeah.
That you guys still remain so joyful, so peaceful, loving the Lord. Your dad's still in the Bible every time I would see him. Like, never turned your back on God, never got angry at God. Like you said, questions. Yeah, we all have questions. Absolutely. It's okay to question God. Some of us grew up kind of like, you can't question God. It's like, listen,
no.
God's not afraid of your questions.
Yeah. He's heard it all.
Absolutely.
He ain't going to be surprised. He knows exactly what you're thinking.
But for you to say, even through all that, and then your wife's postpartum and how she was able to overcome that God kept like just wooing you closer and closer, and like, son, come back home. Come back home. And that you finally got back home serving the Lord. And now several weeks ago, your champion, your hero, your best friend, you are very similar to me and my dad. You're very, very close to your father.
I worked with him for almost 20 years because he's also a barber.
Yep. Side by side, he's the one that taught you how to cut hair. Basically gave you the barber shop.
Yep.
And now several weeks ago, he passes away.
Yep.
And yet there's this resiliency in your family, this peace, this hope, It's going to be okay. God knows what he's doing.
God knows exactly
We
what
know
he's
exactly
doing.
where your father is. He is in glory now. Everything he was reading about has been now revealed to him live and in color. And your dad was an incredible, incredible hero.
Thank you.
Every time I would see him, you would never think your family went through that tragedy. People that meet you never would have an idea that you went through that tragedy or your wife went through such a difficult moment. You guys are all so full of faith and hope and joy. So I want you to do me a favor if you can. Why don't you look at the camera and why don't you talk to some listeners for the next maybe minute or so. If somebody today went through tragedy, they're upset at God, they're bitter at God, they're angry at God, what would you tell them? How would you minister to them? Los, I want you to talk to people who today have gone through grief and loss. What would you tell them about all that you've walked through?
What would I tell you guys? Number one, you guys are not alone. The enemy's going to tell you that you're by yourself, that you're not good enough, that look at your God, look what he allows you to go through, anything that, I don't know your story, but you hear my story now. And like Alex says, you would never think that people have gone through situations, but God is always there. And in moments like this, when you feel like nobody's around you, that nobody's listening, God is listening. God is closer than ever. God is always going to be on your side, waiting for you to call out his name. And I challenge you to challenge God. Make that challenge. Give him that challenge and see what God can do with your life. God will be there and God will show up and he will shock your world because he's done it with me. Things like this, God, as bad as they seem, as bad as they look, God always shows up and he will always show you that he has always been there. So don't give up. Go to a church, link up with a good church. Calvary's a good one. And show up. Don't stop showing up. God will minister you and he will guide you and he will direct you. But take the first step. If you need to forgive some people, forgive them. You don't have to go do it in person. It's okay. But you need to let go. Because if not, you're not going to grow. You're not going to grow. And God needs you to forgive. Just how he forgave us from what we've done, you got to do it too. And if you guys see me at church, or you guys want to talk one day, I'm open to discuss anything you guys want to talk about. That's what we're here for. We're brothers, and that's why it's so important to go to church so you can meet other people that have gone through situations similar to you guys, and that's what we're here for.
Thank you, my brother. I think you just said something so valuable. By the way, thank you. Thank you once again for sharing your story and for sharing something so difficult. But you just said something so powerful. It doesn't mean you have to fix the relationship with that person. It doesn't mean, you have to go do it in person, none of that. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean restoration.
Exactly.
Forgiveness is more about you than it is about that other person.
Exactly.
For the last 10 years, your brother-in-law has been in prison. But if you would have not forgiven him, you would have been in a prison yourself.
Amen.
Your mom and your dad would have been in a prison. Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, you guys would have been in a prison. But because you guys forgave, whether that was a day later, a week later, a month later, or a year later, because you guys forgave, the last decade, you guys were living in peace. You guys were living in freedom and grace. Doesn't mean, like you said, now you're having that feeling where like, man, you know what? I'm going to go see him in person. I want to go tell him I forgive him and I love him. But you forgave him long before that.
Yeah.
And so if today maybe somebody's dealing with unforgiveness, it's like, it doesn't mean you have to be best friends with this person.
Exactly.
You may need some boundaries, but you live free.
It's true. And what I wanted to say is also, as a Christian, you're forgiving them, but sometimes they need to hear that too.
Yeah.
Because that might help them.
Yeah.
Put yourself in their position. A person that, man, I thought I did so much harm, because I know that's what he's thinking right now. He's probably thinking, man, this guy must hate me.
Yeah.
I messed up. He hasn't come to see me. He feels like he probably let me down. So by me showing up, just like you guys showing up, or even just texting anything, it shows them, hey, as a Christian, we forgive.
This faith is real.
There's faith.
Yeah.
I forgive you. Like Alex said, you don't have to have a relationship with them. That's okay. Because I'm never going to have a relationship again with my brother-in-law.
Right.
He's going to be in prison forever. But by me forgiving him might help him.
Yes.
Get closer to God.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
that's what I believe. In my situation, in a lot of you guys' situations, that can be the case.
Yes.
Forgive them, and you'll see what God can do with them.
Yeah. Let God do the rest.
God will do the rest in their life.
Your mom, her name once again?
Maria.
Doña Maria.
Doña
Maria Flores, a woman of God, a woman of strength, a woman of, like I said, grit at the beginning, tenacity, a woman of faith. Yep. She is a true woman of faith, and I think reminds me a lot about, my mom, people that we've known who are these men and women of God that are unshakable. Yep. And I feel like I went to the hospital when your dad was, his last few days, and your mom was just strong.
Yeah.
Even with tears coming down her eyes, there's strength. There's not like this despair. There's not like this hopelessness.
Yeah.
She knows exactly where he was going. Mm-hmm. She knows exactly what's going on. And what an amazing privilege to have a mother like that. To be like, man, my mother was a woman of God. And to this day, loving the Lord, now raising your nieces. Obviously, your father helped the last decade, and now your mom with this challenge. And I know all of you guys step in to help raise your nieces. And we're praying for your whole family. You guys are absolutely incredible. I think the gift of faith that your mom has, I think she instilled it in you. I see it every time we talk about whatever it is, whether it's the barbershop, church, or your family, there's this faith in you that you just believe God. You're just like, I tell people all the time, I think, Diana has more faith than me. I'm very like, Lord, please, if you can.
That's okay.
That's okay. 100%.
You grab onto those people. Yeah. And that's why it's important to be
all you need is a mustard seed. I'm like, Lord, I have a mustard seed.
But you need those people that are going to tell you, hey, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
What are you going through?
Yeah.
All right, just pray. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And that's okay to be that person. Not everyone's going to have that gift.
Yeah. You have like this cool, calm type of spirit that you're just like, God's going to do it. It's okay. God's going to do it. And I'm always like, I've never seen Carlos lose his temper. I've never seen you go too high or too low. You're cool-headed, level-minded, and with faith. And it reminds you a lot about your mom. Like every time I see your mom, she's like that. She's just, she may be sad. Obviously, your dad was passing away.
Of course.
But then I remember when we went to the funeral home, she was with a smile on her face, hugging people, loving people, ministering to people.
We had a service.
Yeah. And it's like,
who has a service?
Yeah. It's like just a family of faith. And I think you guys remind me of everything in this world can and will be shaken, but there's another world. And that world is more real than this one. And if you fix your eyes on the author and the finisher of your faith, he'll give you that stability.
Amen.
And you guys are people of stability, people of faith, people of hope, people of resilience. And so I want to honor you and commend you today, brother.
Thank you.
I want to acknowledge that every single time we're hanging, every single time you're cutting my hair, every single time we're talking, you just have this faith. Oh, watch what God's going to do. He's going to do it. We're talking about church. You're like, look what God's going to do. I'm telling you. And you just have this faith about you. And so thank you for being a man of faith. And I think this is actually only the beginning for you. I think God's going to continue to develop that in you. And God's going to use you in a mighty, mighty way. And I know he already is, but there's levels that God's going to take you to. You are a man of faith. And so I want to honor you and I want to thank you. Thank you for being here today for a little bit and sharing your story. And hopefully this is the first of many as we continue to talk. And I want people to get to know you. Carlos, the barber, and Nika Barbershop. And Nika Barbershop is no longer in Hialeah.
Now I'm in Miami Lakes.
You're in Miami Lakes now. So if you want to go get a haircut, you got to go to Miami Lakes. The new place is absolutely amazing.
Which is another place. I'll tell you guys about the whole journey about that.
Oh, that was a whole nother journey of fame. We got to do a part 2 about that.
We'll do a part 2 on that. Or you can go get a haircut and I'll let you know. I'll show you how God
Sit there for 30 minutes and you'll hear the whole nother story.
You're going to hear the gospel.
But you're at Miami Lakes, shining your light and continuing the legacy of your father.
Amen.
Sergio Flores. You continue his legacy, honoring him. Yep. We know that he is now more alive than ever before. And he is in glory, and you continue his legacy here on earth. And so I love you, my brother. Thank you for being here.
Thank you
and
for having me.
I appreciate you. Absolutely. And always remember that if you change yourself, you can change your world.